Welcome to Season 2, Episode 3 of the Face to Face podcast, where we're going to talk about the database segments, messaging, and the media, what goes in, and getting an ROI out.
This is Face to Face with the co-founders of the National Association of Expert Advisors, Jay Kinder and Michael Reese.
We believe that we can change the real estate industry. There is a better way to sell real estate.
Your success is ultimately a sum of the decisions that you make.
And they're really developing a process, a set of guidelines, a set of procedures.
They're also best-selling authors.
Here today to discuss the issue is Jay Kinder and Michael Reese.
All right, Jay, man. One of the most fun things to do is talk to you about databases. I know how much you love them.
Actually, I love what they can do for you.
Yeah.
I don't care for them that much, but I actually love what you can do with them.
Well, the good thing is I think this is going to be I think we can make it whatever we want to make it. And so, one of the things that I think about podcast is I'm always thinking about the voice. So just to kind of give perspective, my goal is to have no constraints in my thinking, and hopefully we can share even stuff that we've learned recently. Because I know that we've been spending a lot of time, getting better as it relates to database, how we communicate to it and stuff like that. So anyway, so today on today's episode, I have been working specifically with Jeff Kiani. Jeff Kiani runs our inside sales department, so he's always working in a database.
Right.
We had a discussion. So I'd like to open this up today with talking about the discussion around prioritizing the database, because that's really what we started with was, here's what I know. Jay Kinder, so many people don't even know what a database is. And just so you know, that when I was talking to Kiani, the process on how we deconstruct things.
Right.
Me and him were just having a high level. And I have goosebumps right now because I know I'm going to hit a trigger and you're going to go off. But we were talking about first of all, what kind of databases are there? And in this conversation, we were talking about, the problem with the databases, why they're important. And what we really got into is some databases have a dialer. Some don't. Some have automation. Some don't. Some have, so it's like if someone were to say, man, what is a database? Why is it important? And what things should I consider? Me and him were having this discussion, and I was like, man, I wish Jay was in here because I know he would have an opinion too. So this is the platform to address it.
Right.
And I'm going to just tell Kiani, hey, you need to go listen to that face-to-face podcast where me and Jay broke that down.
Right. So, yeah, so there's, and the first thing is, when I think of databases and all of the different ones that I've used in the past, and some good, some bad, the first thing I always think of, is, it's whatever, it's only, no matter what database you're using, it's only as good as whatever you put in it, right? The information that's going into the database is going to determine whether or not you ever get any value out of the database. And I think that's the first thing. So there's definitely a lot of different, angles you could look at in terms of what you want your database to do. But I think the most important thing is to get clear on what it is you want inside your database and how you're going to utilize that information to increase sales or to stay in touch with past clients or whatever the goal is with your database. So for me, I found a lot of things that are really interesting. One of the things that I find that most every real estate agent that we come in contact with is that they just don't have good segmentation in the database from not just your sphere of influence, past clients, to prospects and leads and suspects of people that could be potential people that are either consuming information or not consuming information that you're sending them, and using that to your advantage to increase sales and to increase the number of referrals you're getting. All of those things are critically important. So I'm curious. So with you and Jeff Kiani, what was the goal? What were you guys talking about as it relates to database? Were you talking about from the inside sales perspective and an ISA who's making calls through a database? What was the conversation about?
The scope was transcended anybody. So here's one of the problems. We were working on a new program called 5252. It was how to get 52 listings in 52 weeks.
Right.
And the reason why is because we've been helping so many people at a high level. And what I mean by that is we'll help somebody. They'll come to an ISA boot camp where we'll train their person. And part of the value people get is the tools and training. And a lot of these individuals are taking on a data strategy. And so in my own personal help with him with his database, we spend a lot of time on the methodology on like what's a subscriber, what's a lead, what's a market qualified lead. And so even yesterday we worked with the high level professional specifically around the segmentation of our pipeline in our database, right? Because here's what I said. I was frustrated. I was like, if these numbers aren't 100% right, then I don't even need to look at them, right?
Right.
And so if you don't set up your database right, it's not worth anything. This database, dude, it had everything under the sun. You want to lick the screen, it's so good. But, you import 3,200 leads and put them all in the wrong category, it messes up all of the reporting.
Right.
Right? And so, like, there's like and the discussion we were having was when he calls for people, he gets into these databases that have no structure, that have no, first of all, they either have none.
Right.
And there's no strategy whatsoever under the sun, which is good. And then we just work with what they have. And they're stuck in this kind of category that I'm going to help him come up with the name. But it's like it's like they're trying to conquer the chaos, so to speak, meaning and when I say that, I'm saying from the book that I'm just talking about all the fragmented pieces.
Right.
So there are all these workflows that are being, so we were like, okay, here's the 3 different types of people that we have. We felt like why you needed a database was, this is what we came up with. You needed a database because it's an asset.
Right.
It provides organization, and it gives action. It tells you exactly, whether you're an ISA or you're an individual producer, it tells you exactly where and what to focus on, whether it's your money or whether it's your time. Because you should either, when I was in real estate, I used to have to, no one created a methodology. People didn't think like we do now that would actually went out and did that work.
Right.
The level of sophistication that was out there was like, yeah, put triple A's and then double A's, then a single A. And I was like, oh, okay, let me segment all my leads by triple A's. It's called the phone book method. Right. And it's like, if it's a good lead, just give it another A.
Right.
At the top, right?
Yeah.
So we broke down, we were laying out this module because we knew in this process that people had to do a lot of things. And here's what we came up with. We needed to teach people why they needed a database, what it was, what the ideal one looked like, what type of options there were, and then we wanted to come up and what we didn't want to do, which is probably my admittedly humble mistake that I've made, is a lot of the times I've done this in the past with a goal of persuading someone to use one.
Right.
Right? And admittedly, I don't give 2 shits what database you use. Here's the reason why. There ain't nothing in it for me. There's no margin in a database. The problem's already been solved by 1 billion different companies.
Right.
What I really want to do is help you be motivated to say, how
do you get the most out of that database?
Exactly. And so what we came up with was, what is a database? It's a CRM. It's a centralized location for managing the buying or selling cycle. It gives you clarity. One of the biggest functions was on next action. And what it really should do is, as you grow your business, it should give you reporting and accountability.
Right.
Right? And so what does it look like? Client retention, transaction, supporting, marketing, and sales. You should support all the functions of the business. And an ideal one, this is ideal. Ideal is it's going to have a dialer, automation. It's going to allow you to get segmentation. It's going to give you KPIs. So it's going to give you access to the metrics that let you track your most desired outcomes. It's going to give you a glance into your inventory in real estate. That's going to be into your listings, what you have to sell. It's going to integrate with some sort of inventory mechanism. And then if it's ideal, it's going to give you transaction management.
Right.
And it's going to be
integrate with it. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And I think in the past too, we've, it's so fragmented in the real estate industry, and there's so many different tools that, it becomes really cumbersome, to try to put the whole thing together.
Right.
And I think admittedly we would say we tried to solve that problem many, many times with
Yes.
we throw in a lot of money at trying to solve that problem with one database that does everything. And I don't know that that's the best practice. I mean, the other side of the coin is always, what is the best in class technology that does this particular thing, and does it work with this other database, and this, can you make it all work together? So definitely has been something we've always focused on. But
the guy you sent me over, Ed? No last name disclosure. We talked to him about him on the. You know what database he uses?
No.
HubSpot.
No kidding?
Mm-hmm. You know why?
No.
It was free.
Right.
Right? They had a free version.
Right.
But they got, hey, that's a slippery slope, doggy dog.
Right.
You
right.
go from free to a lot of money real quick.
Right.
But he had been using it for years, so had Kiani. And so Like, there's no real excuse for someone not to have one. Is my only point.
For sure, for
Yeah.
sure. So let's talk about what is the most valuable thing in the database. So it's like starting at the foundational level. When we broke down our database, and we have a methodology for how we look at our clients, our clients and our past clients and our sphere of influence and the people who send us referrals. The first question I usually ask someone who's been in the business more than 5 years, at least more than 4 years, is how many people do you have in your database that how many past clients do you have in your database, and then how many of them sent you a referral in the past. Nobody knows the answer to that question. It's always it's always kind of a guess, but we always feel good about the number of referrals we get because there's no measurement tool for whether it's good or bad, right? Because there's nobody that has that data, readily, available to give me. But if you have, let's say you have, the guy I was talking about the other day that I think we talked about it in our last podcast, that had 2,500 people in his database.
Yeah.
How many of those people sent a referral? If you don't know the answer to that, you have to start asking better questions of the people that are coming to you, and you have to track it back to your database. And the story I always go to is the Shannon Brown story, which is when you think about somebody who's a raving fan. Of course, your raving fans are your people that are sending you at least one referral per year. We all have a handful of raving fans. We probably have more than we even know. I used to ask the question whenever I would get a call, somebody wanting to list their house. I'd ask them, what advertising did you see that made you give us a call? And they would always tell me, well, I saw your wrapped Hummer, I saw your billboard, I saw I heard your ad on radio, I heard this, that, the other. They always gave me something, or I see your signs everywhere. Or they can't remember, but they would always try to tell me what advertising they may have saw, or what marketing we may have done that may have influenced them. And then when I started asking a better question, which is who do I need to thank for sending us your business? Interestingly enough, all these same people, every single person that was coming to me was influenced by somebody. And I didn't realize how powerful that was, and I wasn't tracking it, so I didn't really know who was sending these referrals, and I certainly wasn't doing things that, to thank them for being the champion of my business, right? But that raving fan, when you think about somebody who's been who's a raving fan, like you've been a raving fan of their business. And I think of Shannon Brown, who's the one person that I've probably referred the most people to, bought the most vehicles from. And Shannon Brown, where he used to be at Bob Moore Hummer, now he's at Lexus in Edmond. And we bought. I bought a Hummer from him. I think I bought 2 Hummers from him. You bought 2 or 3 Hummers. No, actually, you probably bought like 5 Hummers from him, didn't you? Because you had like 5 wrapped Hummers at one time. And over the years, I referred so many people to him. When you think about the whole process, it wasn't that I had some amazing car buying experience with Shannon Brown, right? Like, it was an average experience, no different than probably every real estate transaction. It's probably just an average transaction, nothing magical about that. What was magical about the whole thing, and the reason I sent him tons of referrals over the years, was how he treated me after the sale. And this is where most of us don't. Number one, we get that first check, that represents 3% of the lifetime value of that customer, and we forget about them and we never talk to him again. Shannon Brown called me 4 times in 30 days. Every time he called me, it was, hey, Jay Kinder, Shannon Brown, Bob Moore, how you doing, buddy? What's going on? How you liking the Hummer? Have you taken it off-road? The next time he calls, 2 weeks later, hey, Jay Kinder, Shannon Brown, Bob Moore, Hummer. And every time he called, I felt more and more connected to him as a friend. And that was an interesting experience. I saved his number in my phone. Next thing you know, I'm stopping people on the road. I'm not on the road. I'm stopping people in conversation. And specifically, I remember being at Outback Steakhouse and somebody having a conversation behind me about buying a Hummer when they had just come out. And I literally interrupted him and gave him Shannon Brown. I actually gave him his number from my phone right there in front of him. Like, why would you interrupt someone's dinner to try to give someone a referral? That's a raving fan. Now, Shannon Brown took care of us, obviously, because he knew we were gold to him. We were good for tons of referrals. We sent him a ton of people that bought vehicles, and just that one little thing, your database. Again, if you track this in your database and you know who the people are that are raving fans, you treat them differently, and you stay more in contact with those people. What would happen if 100 people in your database all sent you one referral next year, right? Like it would be, it's an astronomical amount, doubling of your business. And so, the double. So it's not hard to double your business. All you got to do is, number 1, create a raving fan experience. Number 2, track it in your database. And number 3, treat those people differently. Thank them for referrals. Spend a little bit more on their Christmas card, this year. Do a little bit more for them. Maybe something personalized like we sent. When we started tracking this, I found that the number 1 person that sent me referrals was my painter. I had no idea. This is a guy I drink beer with at all my remodels and stuff like that. And it was shocking to me.
After work, not
After
during
work,
work.
not during work.
Right.
After work, we buying and flipping
Clarify.
houses and whatnot.
Don't try this at
We
home.
don't. Yeah, unless it was call night late, like 10 or 11 o'clock, we would sometimes be drinking at the office. But most of the time, we save that for other activities. But yeah, so Dave DeBaca had sent me 4 referrals in 1 year, 4 people that did business with me in 1 year. I had no idea. He didn't even tell me. I mean, he didn't even talk about it. You know what I mean? He just, when he would do a job for someone, he'd go in and paint a house. He would just refer us, and hey man, you need to call Jay Kinder. And I didn't know it, but he got OU tickets that year. You know what I'm saying, for his birthday. And that was just a way of saying thank you for the people that are out there that are really being a champion of your business, and you have more of them than you know. So that, I think that's fundamentally, that's not from the marketing and sales and getting new business out of it. That's not the part of the database I'm talking about. I'm talking about the people that are in there that are advocates, that have sent you referrals, maybe never done business. You're raving fans, the highest level, the person that's done business with you before or sent you multiple referrals. A level below that, you might have somebody who's just a current customer or a past customer that hasn't ever sent you a referral and hasn't ever repeated. They've done one transaction with you. And then you have, your current clients that are currently doing business with you. And then you have prospects, people in your database, that are haven't ever referred you. They maybe they're in your sphere of influence, but they've never referred you and they've never done business with you. So, like, if you start tracking that in your database, I can tell you this: there's a certain percentage of that database that's going to refer business to you, and you want to try to increase on that every year. We call it your client efficiency referral ratio, right?
Yeah.
So,
the thing that I would like to expand on there, which is when you asked me the first question about. I think with Kiani, so like it's really coming up with, it's almost like, when you're talking about a persona,
right.
A persona is like a person's personality that you're communicating to. An example would be like an agent with a team, an agent without a team, and a new agent, just for y'all listening. But to elaborate on this, the persona might be a person with the database who's ignoring it, a person without one, right? And so, like, someone who, all those different categories, whether you're ignoring it or you don't have one, the fundamental mental model is you're going to have to communicate to it because its value is elastic. It's either going up in value or lower in value. And you want to prioritize your communication, like you're saying, to referrals. But you can also bring influencers into the community, people who have influencers. You can bring in sphere of influence.
Right.
And the conversation that really, when I was kind of seeding the conversation, was you can bring data into the database.
Right.
You can bring expireds. You can bring FSBOs. But what happens is, if you bring, I'll give you an example. In our database, we sell the book Inside Sales Predictability. And when people buy that book, they pay $6 for shipping and handling, right?
Right.
The question is that a customer or is that a lead or is that a subscriber, right? Like, what is that? If you call a person just because they bought a book, a customer, and then you start spending money on customers, investing money, we had to make a decision, on what we were going to define in our database as a customer. And so, it's very easy to say, oh, well, we'll just use the universal terminology. They spent money, they're a customer. Well, I mean, we had an amazing conversation. I won't.
Yeah, that could be a good conversation because I mean, you could obviously go either. I mean, you could say, yeah, they spent money, they invested in a book. They're a customer, but maybe not.
I would
right?
I would take what Clayton Mass told you about organizational structure.
Right.
Organizational structure is what?
Whatever you want it to be.
Whatever you want it to be, based upon the goal.
Right.
And so that's the little stickiness in your mind.
Right.
And I've fell victim, and I know you do. When you're a student and you're just trying to follow the instructions and like living in a reported world,
right,
that you can't be flexible even if it doesn't make sense based upon the goal, it makes everything else infinitely more complicated.
Right.
And so we had to work some of those things out as it related to that in order to leverage the database, dude. Yesterday, that's where I spent my time. Yesterday was like literally clarifying the database. Well, in my real estate with Jeff Kiani, and dude, he is a boss. Like what he gave me yesterday, I was like, I want to know every single, we call them MQLs, market qualified lead. And the reason why, bro, is I talked to a lady. She bought the ISA book. Okay. I talked to her, and I'm using our example the way that we look at it, just because sometimes it helps connect dots when you look outside of your industry.
Right.
And we had the privilege of doing this, so I'm just sharing.
Right.
But I talked to this lady, bro. She has been in real estate for 60 days. She's breathing hard trying to use a refrigerator because she cleans houses. She bought inside sales predictability, and she was an MQL for hiring an ISA. No. So I only talked to 2 people.
What is a lead?
I talked to 2 MQLs.
Right.
And both of them weren't MQLs. And I said, I got on the phone with everybody, and I said, I do not care what it takes. The whole purpose of this database is for it to be relevant.
Right.
Right? And so we got to practice discipline. Discipline thought, discipline action, right?
Discipline people, discipline action.
Yeah. And so it was like, guys, listen, just because we're putting checks in the box, no, this has to work. When I learned one thing about rejuvenating my database, and I remember doing an inner circle call on this topic way, in the past.
Right.
I actually, all I did, honestly, is I called.
Right.
I called. And though, you know why I called? And you know why? I'll tell you the reason I called and the reason I didn't call. You want to know what?
Yes, I do want to know.
Okay, 2 things. The reason I called is because my belief was high because they had suspended my disbelief by giving me proof that somebody else had actually done it and got a result that was in alignment with my desired outcome. Chad Goldwasser called his past client database and supposedly got 19 deals.
Right.
So interest high.
Right.
Disbelief low.
Right.
I'm going to take action, but I wouldn't have taken action until I got a script. I had interest. I had a script to take action.
Right.
And then I got challenged. Once I was challenged, the game was on.
Right.
Right. And I was held accountable basically.
Right.
To that. And I used to record them, bro. And I had like 9 people. It was in my little Google folders. I recorded all the calls, and I had 9 people that gave me a referral during that challenge.
Right.
And honestly, I never did it again. I mean, crazy.
Right.
So it's just a reality. So I think the mindset that you have to that you have to be bound into is if you don't have one, it is your asset. It does provide you organization. I called other people in my database. I just didn't call the priority ones, which were the highest ones.
Right.
And then there's people like you who are crushing builders, right?
Right.
In your market. You're like the King Kong of the marketplace. Every influencer in town knows you. The bank uses your stuff that you communicate to the leaders of the bank with stuff out through your database.
Right.
And you have the attention of all those people. And so it's one of those things. And the guy in my marketplace, one of the guys who did the most amazing job, he didn't outsell me personally when I was in the game, but he definitely would have if I would have stayed in the game because he had a better strategy. And his strategy was very database driven. And so I think what you said was if you could get 100 referrals, let that sit for a minute.
Right.
Yeah? 100 referrals. That
do the math.
Do the math. Yeah, that should
What else are you
going
going
to
work on this week? Right.
Yeah, what else are you going to work on this week?
And the funny thing is, too, I mean, it feels heavy. Like right now, right now people are going, he's so right. They're so right. I know I need to do this. But good Lord, what am I going to do? Sit down and go through my entire database? I mean, we got a guy that's been calling me every day this last 2 weeks trying to get, for about 3 months, about 5 to 10 hours worth of your time. It'll actually take some of your time. They'll do all the work for you, and they'll even call your past clients for you. They'll do it all. It ends up costing you about $1,500 and about 10 hours of your time over 90 days. But you can have this done, right? Like, so you don't have to go and do all this work. You can hire someone to come in and clean up your database and help you with execution.
All right.
So that's you don't have to do all of this because it ain't no fun. You know what I'm saying? Like cleaning up a database is not fun. But going back to your point originally too, the challenge that I feel like I was hearing. Maybe I don't know. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're going to make calls for someone who has a database, the first big problem you have is there's several hours of work that needs to be done getting the database cleaned up so that you can make calls and be effective with it, right? Like whether you're going to make the calls or you're hiring us or somebody else to make the calls, your database, what you put in and how it's put in there is going to determine whether or not you can even be successful making those calls,
Yeah.
right? And that's just it's business 101. I mean, I
You
think
might have to export that database to make calls and then re-up 2 different places if you,
right.
depending on your strategy and what's in alignment with your long-term goal and where you are.
Right,
you
right,
know?
right. So you said something too about when you were talking about leads that rang my bell too, because like, you know, I don't know if everybody connects the dots. You know what I'm saying? Thinking of the way we're looking at is it a subscriber or somebody who bought the book that's not an MQL, not a market qualified lead, and that's a lot of language that if you get into HubSpot and you get into the studying of this stuff like we have, that that may or may not make sense to you right now, but when you're to kind of relate back to your real estate business, this goes back to if you get 100 buyer home search leads, how many of those are going to actually close? And we know historically statistics show 2% is about the average of every agent we've ever met in our life, right? Just a home search, just a generic home search, is that a lead, right? And what you're saying about the book is that someone that buys a book, are they a candidate to buy to hire an ISA? And the answer is just because they bought a book doesn't mean that they are in the market to hire an ISA and buy any of our services related to how we could help them solve that problem, right? Mm-hmm. And so, going back to your real estate business, how many of these buyer leads are actually really leads? How many of these people are actually buyers that are going to buy in a time frame that makes sense that you're going to spend your time or money in terms of marketing and communication or whatever the case may be with that person? And I think it's just one of the most important things that most people don't do. They think a lead is a lead is a lead is a lead, and it just isn't. You should look at every, you got to get clear on, to you, what is a lead. To us, from Inside Sales Predictability in that book, a person that's got in the business 60 days ago and has another job cleaning houses and is selling real estate is not a customer, not a potential customer. Therefore, we would not want to spend the same amount of money if we were going to mail them something or we were going to spend more time trying to convert them. They're not qualified for the offer that we would make them. And it's the same thing with a buyer lead. We think they're all just because they're searching and looking at homes that they're all leads. And the reality is, what is a qualified lead for you? Who are you willing to get in the car with? Somebody who's willing to sign a buyer brokerage agreement that's willing to commit to you. They have a significant need or want or desire to be in a home in the next 90 days. And they're not committed. They're not working with another agent, obviously. But those are 3 criteria that is a qualified lead. That is someone I would spend my time on. And do you even have that information? Are you collecting that information? And if so, are you validating that information and making sure that those things are true? And when you're talking to them, and then do you have a follow-up system to make sure that you're helping, you're converting the maximum amount of those? So there's just because you have 1,000 leads in your database, or you got 200 new leads this month, doesn't mean that you're going to sell any of those people. You have to have a plan for how you're going to segment that data, segment those people, and communicate to the ones that are most likely to do business with you based on your criteria for what a lead is, right?
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I would take that, and once you know what those people are, you have to align that. So those are going to be people that are ready to do business, the people that you're going to invest time in. Who will you invest money in?
Right.
Who will you invest an email versus a direct mail piece? Is like if somebody says, this is the exact scenario. Kiani asked me because he'd never actually sold real estate and he doesn't really work with buyers at all. And we were talking, but he knows database principles.
Right.
He does, and so he didn't even ask. He said, give me the journey. And I was like, well, what I mean is some buyers are ready to be shown. Some buyers you've already shown before. You're continuing to show them.
Right.
Right. And we were talking about the different stages of a lead and different, the buying life cycle.
Right.
And so the cool part about, having a database is that in our business, and we didn't know what we didn't know, but we damn sure accidentally did some stuff right. Right. And so sending out the Monday Morning Mojo.
Right.
That was an email that was a certain type of content that went out. And, dude, still today, last week, I had an email that goes out that Karin's set up that's automated, but the link's not getting updated. And I get people probably every week for the last month, people replying to that, hey, the link doesn't work, because it used to be this automated, deal from back in the day.
Right, right.
And I'm like, how do I turn that thing off? I mean, people are still getting the email.
Right, or update the link.
With a link that's not been updated, for
Right.
6 months. And so the point there is that first of all, it's an old database. It's a website that unfortunately I didn't categorize all the websites I built over 10 years. Mistake, footnote.
Right.
Where are all your leads coming into your database?
Right.
And have that index with all your passwords you have for all your things.
Right.
But with
You're
that,
gonna need a Google Doc for that.
Yeah, you're gonna need and preferably a spreadsheet, and share it with an old email just in case.
So true.
Yeah. So, but the point is that in this buyer's journey is that I like to look at it. Who's doing something in the next 12 months? Who's doing something and this is how you segment it. So when we did our first database automation, I think we had 90 days, 6 months, and 12 months. And what all that means is you got to decide on what yours is. You have different conversion points, and you have buyers that are in the process that are different. If you know those things up front, it's going to help you connect your marketing efforts with your sales efforts.
Yep.
Because you'll have basically triggers that and you'll be marketing. And the difference here, guys, here's the word. Learn the difference between advertising and marketing. Because when you're communicating to your database, you're marketing to them. And really, you might be marketing to them based upon their problem. And what you want to do, in my opinion, if you're marketing to them, whether it's email or whatever, you want them to come to the conclusion that you understand their problem more than anybody else. Therefore, i.e., you are an expert, right?
Right.
This guy understands my problem better than I do.
Right.
So I'm unconsciously unconscious. He just told me 3 things I wasn't even thinking about.
Right.
I need to go ahead and get with him because why? He going to be helpful.
Right.
Right. And so in your database, you want to have content that's being communicated to them. I mean, content can be a birthday card with a thank you. If you want to be a real ninja, say thank you and how are those Sooners going, right?
Right,
if they're
right.
a Sooner fan.
Right.
So there's a good book out there that we read that gave us a lot of our mindset.
Hug Your Customer.
Yeah, Hug
Jack
Your Customer.
Mitchell.
It's a great book. You should go listen to it if you get a chance, or listen to it or buy it. Sorry, that was not. You can read it if you want to, or have someone read it to you. You don't have to listen to it. I don't care how you consume it. Just consume it. But that is that is the point. Is that your database gets communication and gets consumption, and so. I was going back to your past client. I was talking to a customer yesterday that just was unhappy, and it was a different business. Unhappy. Their communication sucked. So guys, if you have listings and you're not communicating with them and you're in your database, your database isn't going to be worth anything.
Right.
So one thing is that the information we're sharing with you does not supersede Business 101,
right.
Taking care of the customer.
Right.
It's not the golden rule, it's the platinum rule. The platinum rule states what does the customer want, right? It's not treat other people like you want to be treated.
Right.
It's treat the customer how they want to be treated, and just understand you might be on a totally different world than the customer, right?
Right.
And so if you can treat the customer and understand the customer's point of view, and what makes them tick, that's what I would consider as the platinum rule. And when you can do that in a way that is meaningful and is truly trying to add value and be helpful, and make deposits in your database, adding goodwill to your database, it's gonna do a lot. What I'd like to do is I would like to share. I know we're getting kind of closer to the end of this podcast. I hope it's been helpful for everybody. I'd like to share this for a takeaway. If somebody just got started, if somebody didn't have a database, or maybe they had one but they would want to say that they're definitely not dialed in, what would be your advice of where to start?
Well, the first thing I would probably say is what is your where are you at, where are you trying to go, and what's your goal? And then reverse engineer. Is that the number one thing you need to be focused on? Because it's real easy to get off of this podcast and go do something, with your database. But there may or may not be something else that you need to be doing that's more important than that right now. So I I always look at it from that perspective. Number one, is this the priority? And if it is the priority, do you have the resources, either time, people, human capital, or money to invest to solve the problem? And if and the answer is yes, then then I would start with getting clear on what my goal is. What am I trying to accomplish with it? With this, because tackling database is like trying to eat an elephant. So get clear on what problem you're trying to solve or what opportunity you're trying to exploit first. Then go solve. How can I get how can I solve that one problem with this tool or this database, as opposed to I'm going to go implement Infusionsoft, right? Like if you say I'm going to go implement Infusionsoft in your business, I know you're not clear on the problem, and I know you're not clear on what success is, and then that drags on for a year. You know what I'm saying? And you really haven't taken and solved any problems with the database. The database should be solving a problem for you. Or it should be helping you exploit.
What are you hiring it to do?
Right.
Hire it for one task at a time.
Exactly.
One job at a time.
That's the most important thing, because it's and
That's
again
great.
These are process. These are you just can't do it all at one time. You got to get clear on what's the most important. And for some people, it's going to be, man, I'm so busy. I got a lot of listings. I don't have good systems in place for communicating to my current listing inventory, which that's probably not most people's problem, but it was my problem at one point. And I had to deal with it, you know what I'm saying? And so that's when I went, to focusing on that problem and solving that with the database and what we communicate to them over the period of time that they're listed. So, but that's probably not your problem. It may be something different, but just get clear on that problem. That would be the first thing.
And so, they get clear on the problem. That's great advice. Then let's end on this other note. Let's say this is somebody that is experienced. They're on the transactional treadmill. They ain't even paying attention to their database, and you log in, and and they have resources.
Right.
Wrong things, wrong order. This guy he actually is in a position where if he doesn't do something now, it's just making everything else harder.
Right.
Where does that person start? And it's funny because I could arguably say it's the same thing.
Right.
Because it's still the same. It's a problem-solving strategy, which says that making things simple and not overcomplicating them and prioritizing the different things that you're trying to do,
right.
Get clear on the goal, reverse engineer the steps, and do one thing at a time is really the universal principle that you're saying.
Right.
Like, what's your desired outcome?
The problem with that person is they're so busy, right? They're so busy that they haven't taken the step. They probably, number one, they don't have anyone that's holding them accountable to any kind of methodology for how they're managing and running and growing their business. They're just hustling, right? Like they're like just getting it every day, and they're so busy that they don't take the time out of the business to work on the business, right? So I think that's just a critical. If you're going to double your business, you're going to spend time. You have to spend time out of the business and ideally away from the business, and working on the business and being strategic and not just tactical, doing it. And for most of us, that doesn't come natural, and we don't have someone in our life to help us become more strategic about how we solve problems in our business. We don't have a methodology for how we solve problems in the business. How do you make decisions? I just make decisions and go and see whatever happens. Is not, at a certain point, for that person, it's worked up to a certain point, so it's kind of created a behavior. You've been rewarded for bad behavior because you grew your business by hustling, making decisions, not slowing down, working in the business. But when you start shifting to being strategic and thinking through the problems and having a process for how you evaluate all the things you could be working on, opportunity and problems that need to be solved, and weaknesses that you have, your strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. When you start being strategic and thinking through that process, that's when you really make the jump. But I know who I would call if I was going to do that. I would call me or you, and let us help you through that process, because you really need some systems put in place that allow you to manage your growth, and that's what we're world class at. But if nothing else, start reading books from Vern Harnish, Scaling Up, Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, and start putting a process in place. Traction's another good one. But those are all books that are going to help you think strategically.
Absolutely. Great advice. Well, we really look forward to the next episode. Yeah, the next episode, we're going to be talking about where 50% of your success is going to come from. I didn't say it, Warren Buffett did. 50% of your success is your ability to articulate your durable competitive advantage. We'll translate that into what that means for real estate agents.
yeah.
So anyway, thanks for joining us, spending the time with us today. We really look forward. If you haven't went and checked out the Double Your Business Challenge, go check it out. You can go to you can go to the same link, which is I think it was kinderreese.com/double. We'll make it double universally, if that's even a word. So anyway, with that being said, any final words, Mr. Kinder?
No, man. As always, we'll either see you at the top
Or from the top. Y'all make it a great day.